where I'm... Okay. What about now? Is it any better now? Is it any better now? Still nothing. Oh my goodness. No audio yet. Sorry. Sorry. Can you hear me now? I've connected my... This is my microphone. I have a good microphone. But probably I did mess up the settings. Yes, now it's better. Very good. Thank you. I'm really sorry about that. All right. All right. Let's go. Let's go. I hope this is the first and last technical difficulty with the stream tonight. Thank you all for joining. Now it's audible. All good. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Again, apologies about that. All right. So the topic today is the initiative. The initiative. The reason of I chose this topic is because there's not too much information really about initiative and active and dynamic play out there. Let me know if I'm wrong. Maybe I missed something. But for example, I created one course for the chessable.com. I hope you're familiar with the platform. It's really good when it comes to especially repetition and memorizing things. And there's no... let's call it a chapter for initiative. There's tactics, there's strategy, there's openings, endgames. There's no initiative dynamic play in open positions. So I'm trying to cover this very important area using some examples of mine and some examples in this case. This is a world championship match between Lasker. Hold on a second. Let me make sure that I don't get it wrong. Emmanuel Lasker, Jose Raul Capablanca, 1921, game number 14. So Capablanca won the match +4, and this was game number 14. And but we'll check the position in a second. I want to talk a little bit about the initiative. So initiative, active play, dynamic play in open positions. This area where you don't really have. You cannot really use strategical. You should use strategy. Like for example, in this case, there's a weak pawn on e4, right? The pawn is weak. It's under pressure. There are lots of pieces attacking it. Of course, you should be. It's white to move, by the way. You should be aware of those kind of things. But the way of thinking, the proper way of thinking in open dynamic positions is like, I don't have time. I do not have time for slow maneuvering. I don't have time. Usually that is the case. And also a critical part to playing good open chess is calculation. Calculation. So I see, for example, all the tactics that everyone is doing is only a tool to improve your calculation, your ability to calculate variations, not necessarily find the win, which is also very important, obviously, right? But sometimes you have to calculate some variations where there's no clear outcome, like a win or like a draw if you have a bad position. So you have to calculate well. That's a critical part of playing good, active, dynamic chess in open positions. But it's only a necessary part. You have to also know what to calculate, how far to calculate, which moves do you choose. So this is, by the way, you can find, I think, the link to the course in the YouTube description to my course for Chessable, where I discuss in deep detail. Here I chose other examples from that course, so don't worry, no spoilers here. If you're interested, you can check the CoChess.com, where you can get a lesson or a Chessable course about initiative. So here I chose completely different games, but they are all circling around the same topic: how to play well in open positions. So number one element is calculation. You can train that by doing tactics, but I think most people train calculation wrong these days. Okay, when it comes to classical approach, let's put it this way. For blitz, you can do the puzzle rush or whatever tactics you're doing online, but for classical chess you need more sophisticated, more difficult calculation, because otherwise you'll not be able to handle the pressure and enormous amount of calculation that is required. So let's start with some simple tactics that could happen in open position. This is an example. Again, Lasker, Capablanca, game number 14. So white has a problem. White has a problem with the pawn on e4, as I pointed out. The pawn is hanging. There were plenty of ways to deal with it. White could have played, let's say, rook f2 e3. White could have played, well, that would be the most solid one, rook f to e3, just protect the pawn, and the position would remain dynamically equal. However, Emanuel Lasker decided to meet the knight e4 threat, so knight e4 is the threat now, knight e4 is coming. He wanted to meet it with g3 and attack the queen, and for that reason he needed to move his... So there was a way to handle this threat just by playing, for example, rook e to e3, weird move. And if knight takes e4, that would be a big mistake, because g3 and queen has to go and the knight would be lost. So that was one of the ways to handle the problem of a pawn on e4. He decided to go a different way. He doesn't want to decide on his rooks. He played the move king to h2. He played king to h2, and the idea was that after knight takes e4, he would go g3, and now the queen cannot move because the knight would be lost. Knight takes c3, g takes h4, knight takes e2. I'm guessing he was calculating something along those lines, and the position indeed remains dynamically unclear. The problem, however, is that when he played king to h2, by the way, if you want to benefit the most from this training session, is especially if you're gonna be watching the not live but on YouTube or on Twitch in the future, you pause the video and you try to figure out the position. This way you would learn the most. All right, so what did Lasker blunder? He blundered a simple check and fork situation. Knight went to g4, check. So he was so focused on the e4 pawn that he blundered this check. King went to h1, and after knight e5, that was just game over. Just game over. That's a fork, take the rook, and the game. And Capablanca won very confidently this game. This is world championship match. And this is the kind of stuff that Emanuel Lasker managed to blunder. The reason I show you this game, that the tactics could be simple. Like if I were to give you this puzzle, that would be an easy one. Knight g4 check, knight e5, winning the exchange, right? But I try to explain why certain decisions were made. All right, so this was an example of a relatively simple tactics. Let me go to another example. Steinitz Lasker. So also, world champions are playing. Steinitz Lasker, let me check my notes. When was the game played? I'm going to immediately show you the jump to the critical position. Queen went to f6. And knight went to g2. This is Wilhelm Steinitz against Emanuel Lasker. World championship match. Again, let me be precise. 1894, the match which Lasker won, +10, -5, apparently, and became a world champion in 1894. And this game in particular ended in a draw. The last move was knight to g2. So Steinitz is trying to improve his knight. It's going to f4, I'm guessing. Knight was on e1, which was bad. So what did Steinitz blunder? What did Steinitz blunder? And I'll tell you more. What did Lasker blunder as well? So the game continued with the knight c6 move, which is not a good move. The knight goes back, offering an exchange. That was not a good move. But on knight g2, I don't know why. I really don't know why, but black could have just taken bishop takes f3. And that's pretty much it. And if knight takes, of course, the idea is not to recapture, but to give a fork on g4. Let me draw some nice arrows here. Knight gives a check and a fork, and this is game over. This is game over. So it could be something along a simple tactics. But two world champions didn't see it, so maybe it's not that simple. You can let me know in the comments what do you think about the level of these tactics. I consider it to be simple. It's just takes and check in both these examples. So I actually want to take one step further and to show, give a little glimpse into how you should be thinking in open dynamic positions, which kind of moves you should prioritize in your calculation, and which moves you should say, I don't like them. I don't like that move. It's maybe too passive, gives too much opportunities to my opponent. So for example, the game continued with knight to c6. Knight c6, of course, it's a forcing move, but after capture, so white should have just captured, bishop takes on c6, and the position remains equal. The position remains equal. Queen b2 check, white can manage easily. So, but Steinitz decided to play more active chess with a check, knight e6, king g8, and that was a bad decision because now that knight needs protection. Now knights would return to e5 with double attack, queen e6 and knight f3. So that would be very hard for white to handle. So, and now white played this weird move, bishop to c2. I don't really understand this move. Maybe cover from queen b2 check. Suddenly there were so many threats. So white played bishop c2, and now Emanuel Lasker, future world champion in this match, he decided just to go. So I'm gonna give you. This is a moment to pause the video if you will be watching it later, or we'll take a minute and think what would you do here. So what do? The correct move was knight back c to e5 with a double threat, right? The pawn on f3 is hanging. The pawn on f3 is hanging, and the knight on e6 is hanging. So maybe Lasker and Steinitz thought that knight comes back to d4 and there's no big deal, and then you literally have the same combination, bishop takes f3, followed by if knight takes f3. Let me go to the move mode, knight takes f3, knight g4 again, of course is winning. So both brilliant players after bishop c2 did not consider knight e5 or one knight to e5. By the way, the three best moves, if my analysis is correct, in this position, all of them are forcing. All of the moves that are good in this position are the forcing moves. This is, by the way, something to note. Again, if you want to learn more in this, you can go to Chessable and look up my last name or type initiative. I think there wouldn't be too many courses there. So queen e5, the moves that Lasker chose, was not a forcing one. This was not a forcing move. Is there a threat? No. Just no. If you have so many forcing moves, so here knight c to e5, I already showed you. Let me use these arrows. Knight goes here, double threat. Knight goes here, one threat. The third best move is knight to b4. All these three moves were forcing, and all of them were better than queen e5. So this is something to pay attention to, that in open dynamic positions, you should be considering very, very aggressive moves. Not so. That's all. That's my advice. Just attack. Queen e5 is not attacking. This is just offering a draw. I don't know. I didn't maybe prepare well. Apologies for that. But maybe the tournament situation was that Lasker didn't need to win. That could very well be the case. So he just wanted a draw. But nevertheless, if you have a good position, attack. Attack. And queen e5 is not an attacking move. Like, is there a threat? Queen e3? No, it's just a passive offer of queen exchange. Nothing more than that. Just queen went to e5. There were so many other good attacking moves, and those moves should have been the priority for two world champions in this case. So, by the way, you can ask some questions and give your comments in the chat. I would try to respond to them to the best of my ability. Although, as you can see, my technical side is not so good as my chess side, so forgive me for any trouble if I do not respond. So queen e5, too slow, and immediately the whole advantage is gone. Like knight c to e5 was winning, queen e5, immediate equality. Of course, because now it's white to move, white can do pretty much anything. So white decided to develop, to move the knight to f4, improve the knight. Makes sense? Of course. Queen takes e3, king takes e3. White says, thank you. Black spent two moves to exchange queens and improve the king and improve the knight. Thank you very much. And now Lasker plays a forcing move. By the way, I don't mean any disrespect. These were the two players that would beat me. Okay, maybe not Steinitz, but I'm not 100% sure. But Emanuel Lasker, he would beat me. But I found these kind of situations in even the best players in the world could sometimes make this mistake. So black had to do to improve the position, maybe with king f7 or something, just improve slowly the position. And now Lasker decides to play an active move, knight takes b4, which is technically a forcing move, but I don't think it's a good forcing move. I'm going bishop b1, and where's this knight going? Is it going to d5? I don't think so. Is it going to d5? No, I'm just gonna take and then just give some fork on c7. So you did open the bishop, that's true. But now, for example, king f7 would run into a fork. Okay, let me remove some arrows. If king goes to f7, which was a good move a move ago, now that would be a horrible move because of fork, because the knight left the station. So now black is in trouble. 2 moves after a winning position, black is in trouble. So black decided to improve the knight with knight to e5, and you can say technically it is a forcing move. Technically it is a forcing move, attacking the pawn. And it immediately worked. There's a question in YouTube. So in this case, is it all right to give up a pawn? I'm not sure which position you're referring to, Avinash Avi. Apologies, maybe I should have timed the question right. The Twitch, I really want to watch this, but I have homework to do. Yes, it would be on Chess24 YouTube channel. Make sure to tune in later. All right. So, and now immediately white, oh my God, my pawn is hanging, and white decided to defend. This is a wrong way of thinking in this position. Oh my God, my pawn is hanging, I'm gonna defend it. I'm not saying give up pawns or be too aggressive, but the first thought in your mind should be, okay, that's fine, my pawn is hanging. My pawn is hanging, but maybe I have something better. Maybe I have something better. Maybe I give you that pawn. So I'll give you a line, and after that, the game was equal till the very end. So this was the last moment where Steinitz could have seized the initiative and maybe get even a winning advantage, or at least a big advantage. So forcing moves first. So even though it may seem that the pawn is hanging and it's like a big threat, knight takes f3 or bishop takes f3 seem like the two threats. Yeah, knight f3, both of them seem like a threat. But what if you have a bigger threat? What if your threat could beat the threat of black? King d4. That was the correct move to go. The king, like if queens are gone and rooks are gone, what do? You improve your, like everybody, hopefully everybody knows that what you're supposed to do in the endgame. You move the king to the center, right? You move the king to the center. I disagree. You should improve your rook first. The rook is the most powerful piece in the endgame, and but it's gone. And now you really need the king. You cannot win the game without the king. So king d4 was the correct move. The king just walks into the middle of the board, running into a check. So I'm guessing both of the world champions thought, oh, this is crazy. Like, it comes with a check, h2 is hanging. Are you nuts? But keep going. King to c5. And now suddenly the knight on b4 is in trouble. The knight on b4. So what do you do? What do you do? Knight on b4 is hanging. What do? You have no place to run. If you run backwards, for example, knight goes to d5. Now your bishop is busy. Okay, sorry. Now it's just capture. My apologies. So it's just a capture. So maybe the only move it can go to is knight to c6, and the king just keeps walking. The king just walks as if it's home. On the queen side, black goes here, and now, for example, after knight c7, the game is over. So that was the wrong thing to do, to put the knight on b4 to begin with. So on king to c5, the only move for black is knight d2. You keep going. I know the bishop is hanging, and your bishop seems to be relatively trapped now. You keep going. King takes b4, very aggressive, forcing move, right? It is a forcing move. White keeps the attack. So this way of thinking, some people, I think that in the endgames are boring, slow, and not interesting, etc. No, you can play very active, aggressive chess in the endgame, and it would benefit you a lot. It would benefit you a lot. Not all of the endgames, of course, but this was one moment, and if White were to seize this moment, Emanuel Lasker would be in huge trouble. For example, knight takes b1, keep going. Keep going with forcing moves, not slow improvement right now. What do you do right now? Knight goes to c5, attacks the bishop. For example, if bishop goes to c8, trying to keep an eye. So if bishop goes to, let's say, h1, white takes the pawn on a6, and then the pawn on b5 would be lost. The bishop would be strong because the fight is on both sides of the board, and the bishop is controlling the key promotion squares. It would be hard to promote those pawns, and black will have a passed f pawn, but white is the one on top. The knight on b1 is like completely out. The king is not participating. All of white's pieces are in the game, so black really would be in big trouble. I have some questions in YouTube. Forgive me for stopping my thought. Let me see. Hi, according to you, which is the best opening for black? Ugh, that's a tough question. According to modern theory, Najdorf and Grunfeld are the two best openings for black, but really tough to study and play. All right, so let's keep going. So white would take. What if black, or after knight c5, would just go bishop c8 and protect the pawn? Why did we give up the pawn? We gave up the pawn for the initiative. Look at white's pieces. The king is magnificent. It is, hold on a second, let me draw some nice arrows. It is restricting the knight. It is ready to go to a5. This knight on c5 is amazing. Now it's the knight on f4 turn to get into the game. Only knight d5 is the correct move. You centralize the knight. There's nothing to do on f4 anymore. Knight goes to e7, and so black goes king f7, stopping the fork. Knight goes to b6, kicking out that bishop. Bishop goes to e6, knight takes a6, and again the pawn on b5 would be lost soon. Knight on b1 is out of the game. Black would have to quickly try to push this pawn. I would say black has drawing chances because white has two knights. But this was a way to seize the initiative. And this was the moment. This was the moment in the game. King d4, attack with aggressive forcing move. Attack, another forcing move. Forcing move. Forcing move knight c5, forcing move knight d5 because fork is coming on e7, and by the way knight b6 would also win the bishop. So king f7, forcing move, and then the next move could also be a forcing one. This is the proper way to play open positions even in the endgame with like barely any pieces left. This is how you should be thinking. This is how your brain should, this is where the direction of your calculation should go. Because it's not enough to calculate well, which you should definitely train. You should also think in the right way. So in the game, unfortunately for us, after backward move knight to d4, passive move, that should be very low on your priority. Oh my god, I need to defend stuff. Well, unless your position is bad, obviously, but this doesn't look like a bad position. And after that, the game was slow. King f7, a3, knight d5, some exchanges happened, bishop d3, and really there's not much going on anymore because the moment was lost. The precious moment was lost, and there's really not much to see after that. They played, but the position was equal. Technically, black is worse because all the pawns are on the white color, but the bishop is a very strong piece and white's king is not so good. After knight e4, the draw, king d5, the draw was agreed. All right, so let me show you another example. So it was an example of simple calculation. So let me start over with this move, knight to g2. Sometimes it's just bishop takes f3. You just take and win. It was not a sophisticated tactic. And somehow two world champions blundered it. I don't know why. They were not like, it was just so well protected a second ago. Remember, the knight was on e1. It's so well protected. By the way, it's still hanging. The bishop takes f3 would still be a threat. The previous move for black was queen to f6. Let's see, how come now bishop f3 is not working? What's the difference? I really don't know. Bishop takes f3, knight f3, knight g4, knight f5, gf5, queen g5 check, and then knight f3, maybe. Bishop takes f3. So this kind of move should always, yes, I'm right, yes. Knight to f5 takes, and then a check, and the queen escapes, and then knight takes f3, and apparently white's king is doing all right. So bishop takes f3, but after queen f6, it's for sure, it's a threat. So according to at least a simple stockfish, h3 was a good move here, just to protect the g4 square. So maybe not so good, maybe there were better moves for white, but knight g2, bishop f3, simple tactics. So let me give you an example of a more sophisticated calculation that could happen in open positions. So this is a game. Let me be specific. Let me open my PGN in my chess base. Pillsbury, Lasker, 1896, St. Petersburg, 4 Masters tournament. Emanuel Lasker, already world champion. So let's see how they did. And the moment I am interested in is, so the game was very complex. Let's see, let's start from this moment. Let's just immediately jump in. Rook takes a3. E takes f7, it was an inaccuracy. Rook takes f7, b takes a3. Look at this position. Okay, you can say this is not really initiative, and I would, well, agree with you a little bit. This is pure kingside attack. This is pure kingside attack. But the way of thinking is very similar. It is very similar. Forcing attacking moves. Queen b6 check, that was the point. So it seems like the king has to go to the center, but no, white finds a nice way, because let's say if the king goes to a1, it's just bishop takes d4, and then you have to take, then queen takes, and then the rook would join, and that would be game over. So bishop b5, queen takes b5, and now king can go to a1, and let's see, there are some complaints. Yeah, I think the stream is doing fine. I see myself on Twitch. I see myself on YouTube. Very good. All right. So, and now black played a very fancy move, Emanuel Lasker. So this is move 22. So I have a very good guess that they could not have been very low on time at this point. The correct move for black was to go queen to c4 with immediate threat bishop takes d4. And if white were to go queen g4, which is like the only sensible way to protect the pawn, for example, black can go rook e7, activate the rook, and the rook is coming to e2, and the game would be over. Instead, Emanuel Lasker played rook to c7 with a very tricky threat. So for example, it seems like, oh, there's no threat, so maybe I can develop my rook to e1. Whoops, with a rook e8 threat, which would be a big, well, or queen e8. You can stop the video now and enjoy the puzzle. And if you're live, maybe you can type in the answer. All right. Rook c1, check. Rook takes c1, bishop takes d4. That was the plan of Emanuel Lasker. So I would give him that the move rook to c7 is a forcing move, which is good, but you need to calculate better than that. Rook d2 was a great defensive move, so that now the other rook can take on c1. And now the game continued with rook to c4, attacking the pawn, which is a good attacking move. And now again, the correct move for white was to go rook to e1. Attack before defending. Attack. Rook to e1. Now the idea is queen to e8 check, or rook to e8 check. The checks are coming, and bishop takes. White would have at least an equality here. But instead, white defended like this. Please don't hit me. Just put Pillsbury played rook h to d1, which is a very passive move, and this is not a good way to. All right, thank you. I'm just reading both places. It's all good, Twitch and YouTube. All right. So rook h to d1, protecting the weakness, right? That seems like a good idea, right? So what was the correct move for black? Attack, attack, and attack. And black, Emanuel Lasker played rook to c3, which could cost him the whole game. Rook to c3. What's that? Attack some pawn on a3, rook takes a3, really? Is that the threat? Okay, technically, again, that would be a threat, but it's such a little threat. You take on a3 and then what? You still have no killing threat. That's not a proper move to go. There's no, I would go as far as say, there's no threat in this position. You should create threats when it comes to keeping your initiative. So black has a very good initiative strategically speaking, right? White's king is exposed. The bishop is on f6 is great. So let me draw some arrows here. The rook is active. The king on g8 is relatively safe. All black's pieces are active, and white's pieces, maybe with the exception of the queen, are not doing so well. So you should act quickly. The correct move here was queen to c6 with a threat of literally mate in 2. This is literally mate in 2. Rook c1, if you take, it's queen takes c1. If you don't take, if you go to b2, it's queen c3, checkmate. So you should really like this move. Mate in 2 is coming. Come on, deal with it. So what is the way to deal with it? Oh my goodness, there doesn't seem a good way to do so. So for example, if king goes to b1, which seems very reasonable, get away from the bishop, stop rook c1. The correct move now, black keeps going with forcing move bishop to g5. And now the rook cannot move because rook c1 would win the game. And if rook doesn't move, black would be winning. So rook to c3, too slow. That's a too slow move. And I'll give credit to Pillsbury. He immediately felt that you don't need that pawn. Queen f5, improving the queen. And now queen went to c4, and now black is lost. Now black is lost in 2 moves from a win to a loss. This is the price of a mistake in an open, dynamic positions. You shouldn't defend. You should attack with every single move, and that should be your mental state. Passive play is terrible. Reeve Preacher from Twitch, yes, passive play is terrible. That should be very, very much low on your priority. If you play a passive move, you don't know what is coming at you. Your opponent can play excellent a lot. I just read the word excellent. Excellent lesson. Thank you, Preacher. So if you play a passive move, you're just waiting where's the punches coming from. But if you play an active move, you're the one on top. Of course, it's not working all the time, but that should be your mental state, and the moves that you prioritize should be active, aggressive moves. So what else? What else? Queen went to c4. Again, renewing it's not really mate in 2, rook c1 takes queen b1, but rook c1 is indeed a forcing move, so white need to deal with it right now. Instead of queen c4, maybe queen c6, but black is already having trouble. Anyways, queen c4, and so rook c1 is coming. What do? White made a very horrible mistake with king b2. Seems reasonable, to be honest. See, that's what I'm talking about, calculation. So I'm giving advice on how to think in open positions, which moves to prioritize, but then you just don't play the move, you calculate it. You calculate to the best of your ability, and in order to calculate well, you need to train your calculation doing difficult tactics, not the Puzzle Rush, not chess.com tactics or any other source that you're using. The calculation should be difficult for you. If it's not difficult, you're not really improving. You may be improving in blitz, for sure, if you do simple tactics. That's for sure, no doubt about that. If you do very simple tactics, you'll excel at blitz, but you would drop significantly in classical chess. All right. I have a question in the Twitch. Is mental strength important to play chess? Because when I'm angry, I play very badly. Some people play very well when they are angry. I rarely get angry myself, but if because I need to be genuinely angry to feel the anger, not because I'm a bad person, just because something went wrong from my point of view. And then I play really well, but it's not for everybody. Yes, mental strength is very important. You need to be able to recover quickly from losses. Especially, it's very hard for blitz game. If you play a match and you lose 1 or 2 games, you can just lose all of them because you don't have time to recover. So yes, mental strength is very, very much important. All right. So where did we stop? King went to b2, and that was a mistake. We'll come back to it in just a second. The correct move was king to b1. You want to stay away from that bishop. You want to stay away from that bishop, right? But that's like too general, too vague. The devil is in detail. So king b1 deals with the rook c1 threat, but it doesn't deal with rook takes a3. But I mentioned before, it's not a big deal, rook takes a3. So what? What's next? This is just one pawn. White can keep going with rook c1, active aggressive move. Rook is coming to c8, queen b5 check. Now you have rook to b2. With the king on b2, that would not be the case. And now white's pieces would just walk in. Black's only move is queen to d3. Let me put it on the board. Queen d3, otherwise the rook just penetrate, rook c8, rook b7, it's just game over. Black has to do this, takes, and after something like rook takes b7, black is in huge trouble, probably lost. So that was it. That's where you need difficult calculation. You need to see what is coming at you, and that is not very easy. That is not very easy at all. So king b2, and now Lasker won the game. once again with a brilliant combination that starts with, drum roll, rook takes a3. Rook takes a3. By the way, here on the I want to give kudos to Sam Shankland. One of his, I think I saw it several years ago, one of the YouTube videos. He was discussing, and I really like the idea, which I'm trying to use myself, is so let's say you created a threat and it seems that your opponent has stopped your threat, right? Like in this case, king b2 stops both threats, rook c1 and rook a3. Your mental state should be, what if I do it anyway? As I'm quoting Shankland. What if I do it anyway? I really like this approach. So it seems that your opponent stops something. What if I do it anyway? You try to do it. And so, for example, if let's say your opponent did a good job and indeed stopped you from doing something, you try, in your mind, of course, you try to do it anyway. And then you would see, why isn't it really working? Why isn't it working? And then you can say, oh, this is how I can make it work. But if you don't ask this question, you just trust your opponent and you assume that she is right. That's not a proper way to go, because you don't know how to make it work. So rook takes a3. What if black does it anyway? Now rook takes a3 compared to the king b1. With king b1, rook takes a3 is just one pawn. But with rook takes a3 here, the a2 pawn is hanging. That's a huge threat, right? So the game continued. With queen to e6 check, and the correct way for Lasker was to go to h8. I'll show you in a second why, but let's because he went to h7 and white could have repeated with queen f5 and black would still have to go to g8. This is very difficult calculation, because if you go now to h8, there's no win anymore, because white has a fantastic move, king to b1. And but in order to understand, this is very difficult calculation. So we're getting to a very difficult area. Yes, there's in Twitch chat the correct combination. So you need to understand why king b1 wasn't working in the first place. So white went king b2, and now rook takes a3. What if white now goes to king b1? That seems like a reasonable move to protect a2, and there doesn't seem to be a win right now, but there is a win. Bishop takes d4. Bishop joins the attack, and if white takes, it's queen takes a2, king c1, and rook c3 would just kill. However, if you give a check on e6, black goes to h7, you come back with a check to f5, and black goes to h8. That seems like such a little difference. The king was just on g8, and now it's on h8. A big difference? No. King on h8 is worse, because in literally the same line, king to b1, bishop takes d4. There's a check on f8, beautiful geometry, king h7, and now queen comes back to a3, taking that rook, and of course white is winning here. So what I'm saying is, after queen e6 check, king h8 was the correct move now, because now there would be no queen f8 move. Let me draw some arrows here. Queen f8 check anymore. So now king b1 would not work. So, and if white goes with queen e8 check, king h7, king takes a3, black keeps going, queen c3, king a4. Now black has time for a quiet move, a6, and there's really no defense from b5. There's really no defense from b5. And let me, I plan to show much more than just the world champions, but I want to quickly show one of my games. All right, so I guess that's always an issue. I prepare too much to be safe, and anyways, I hope you're enjoying this, and there's no technical difficulties. All right, so let's just come back to the game. The game went king b2, rook takes a3, white gave a check first, black went king h7. A practical try was to go to f5, but Pillsbury didn't go for it. He took the rook, and this is literally mate in 5. Queen c3 check, king a4, b5 check. It seems the king is getting away, not so fast. Queen c4 check, the only move is king a5, and after bishop d8, the mate would follow on the next move. So the main lesson of this one is tactics could be sophisticated. That was some very rich, sophisticated, difficult tactics that you just saw right now. I'm trying to help you think better when it comes to open positions, in this case kingside attack, and what to calculate and how long to calculate. Let me read some questions. Except perfect your chess imaginations in chess, Ogre calculation book and Maxime Bloch combinational motifs. What calculations book do you recommend? That's a good question. That is a good question. That's some very good list of books right there. I don't have the answer because for that I need to know the level of player, because if the book is too difficult, you'll get disappointed and angry and you wouldn't learn too much. And if the book is too easy, which doesn't seem to be the case with these books, you're also really not learning. That's why I'm a very low opinion of doing Puzzle Rush as a tactics trainer, because like half of the positions there are very primitive, at least to my understanding. So you will get better in Blitz and Bullet, but you will become worse in classical chess. Worse in classical chess. By the way, I noticed statistics. Visualize courses on Chessable are helpful. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, go to Chessable. You can check my course there, and it's just a great platform for repetition, for visualization, for tactics and openings. All right. So what was I saying? Yeah. When you excel at Blitz, you become a worse classical player. I don't know how Magnus does all of it. He's like amazing and all of it, but the #1 rated Blitz player in the world is Hikaru Nakamura. Unfortunately for Hikaru, he's only number 20 in the world in classics. And he was number 2 just 5 years ago. He was number 2 in the world, and then he got his Twitch channel and he started focusing on Blitz, at least that is my understanding. So he became much better in Blitz and much inferior in classics. It's very hard to keep the balance. Hikaru is bad at classical now at Twitch. He's not bad. He was just amazing. Now he's just really good, right? That's the bad is too strong, right? But he's amazing in Blitz. But if you want to become a better Blitz player, then one set of skills and practice is required. And when you want to become better classical player, you need to work on something else. For Blitz, you can just study some dubious opening and kill everybody with it, right? But in classics, it would never work. All right. So let me show you my own game. Let's see how much time we have. Not so much. All right. Let me quickly upload my game. It turns out that we're discussing kingside attack at this moment, but it is very close to initiative and how to think. Well, we did the endgame. That's good. All right. So this is my game from many years ago. I played in 2011, so more than almost 10 years ago. I played Abhijit Gupta in New Delhi Open 2011, round number 7, and it's a funny story about the game, so I guess we would just skip all the variations that I have prepared, but I would just try to focus on the main things that I wanted to show you guys. I played e4 in 2011. I was almost exclusively e4 player, and Abhijit Gupta plays e6, which he never or almost never played before. On the first move, and I'm like, okay. What's going on? And then I thought, what is going on is that I'm playing exclusively knight d2 in this position. Exclusively knight d2. Knight c3 is better. No doubt about it. I just play knight to d2. So I played knight d2 and he blitzed out the moves. Knight f6, e5. So we go to the main line and I know where, so my third move is very expected, but so he studied this line, f6 takes, knight f3, queen c7, castle, bishop to d6. And I think, so when he would open the database in 2011, I was always playing g3 in this position, followed by bishop f4. I still do, by the way. But I thought, I know this position much better than my opponent. Are you still an active GM, sir? YouTube question. Is anyone these days with COVID? When regular chess returns, I will be at the board. For now, I'm a full-time video contributor and coach. So please go to chessable.com to enjoy my course about initiative, to learn much more than just in this one lesson. All right, so he goes for this position, and I studied different moves here. I never played them, so I analyze this position. I feel much more comfortable with it, so I feel like I'm on my territory. So I just avoid whatever I was playing before. So I went with bishop g5, he castled, and I went rook to c1. just develop the rook, why not? Bishop to d7, I play bishop h4. This is one of the moves in this position. So from strategical point of view, we need to remove these bishops, and then black would be left with the classical bad bishop on d7. So that's the idea of behind bishop to h4. And so that's why he played knight h5. This was one of the moves back in the day. I think now there are better moves, maybe bishop e8, I'm not sure. Knight to h5, but this was like an automatic move. And here I was on my own, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go bishop b1. That was a novelty back in the day that I came up over the board, if I remember correctly. I have analysis for this one, but I think no, it's just over the board decision. Bishop to b1. I'm just moving the bishop, preparing to go queen d3. So now he does a very classical sacrifice for French. Rook takes f3, pawn takes f3, ruining my king cover. And now he just takes my pawn. Bishop takes h2, and I chose the king g2 square. I'm not sure. I hope it's obvious for all of you viewers. Why did I choose g2 square? You can try to guess, but the main idea, I want my pieces to be active. So let me look at this. This guy is active. Sorry, h8 diagonal. This rook is active. This rook is doing fine on c1. Come on, I clicked on it. Yes, blue lights. No, it's not working. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Again, my rook on c1 is good. My rook on c1, I don't know why is it not throwing arrows. Anyways, I don't know, I have some technical trouble. Sorry, my rook on c1 is good. My bishop on b1 is good. My rook on f1 is not good, to say the least. So I wanted to be on h1. That's why I chose king g2. And immediately now my opponent makes a mistake, even though he plays a very logical move, knight to f4 check, forcing an exchange of knights. The correct and weird move was to go bishop to f4. That's a weird stuff. Again, technically a forcing move, attacking my rook. So I just want to show you the spirit of the position and the price of a mistake in an open position. In this case, the price of a mistake is very high because there's a kingside attack happening. But on the other hand, you have seen in the endgame example, sometimes if you don't find a series of 5 or 10 correct moves, forcing, attacking, aggressive moves, you will not get advantage, like in the Steinitz Lasker game, where the king just marches forward, and all the moves were the only correct moves that seize the initiative. All right. So, for example, if white were to capture, that would be a horrible move. Knight takes f4 check, king has to return to h1, and after rook to f8, this is a classical example of the attack. The rook is coming to third rank, the sixth rank. So for example, bishop goes to e3. The rook can join the attack like this. e5, the bishop would join. White is in huge trouble. This is very surprising. It may not be obvious it's not super obvious, I would say. But white is playing without a rook on f1. Apparently, e5 is just crushing it. Like if you take now, the queen joins the attack, and white's king would be lost. Like all of black's pieces are awesome. So one wrong decision, knight takes f4, and you're lost. The price of a mistake in an open position is very, very high. That is why you need to calculate well. You need to know what to calculate. So let me show what was the right, or there were several ways to play this position. For example, this is a way to think. Forcing moves first, and then you try to improve your positions. For example, queen d3, attack the h7. Logical, very logical, g6. So now rook is hanging. Where do you move it? Rook c to e1 would be a very good move. You put the rook to open file. Black goes rook to f8. That's a good move. So usually the game has waves. At first, you develop pieces, and you start to create some tension. You start to create some tension in the position. The pieces are approaching one another. Some attacks start to happen. Let me illustrate by exactly this game. What do I mean by that? So, okay, this is opening. So far, each side is developing pieces, right? Knight goes to f3, castle, bishop d6. The bishop is developed. No, bishop g5. So far, no tension. There's barely any attacks. So far, pieces are being developed, but the tension is rising. Okay, so with each move, some pieces start attacking each other, right? White is putting pressure on the c file and with the bishop, and on h7, so there is some tension. Bishop d7, we're still developing pieces. Bishop h4, knight h5, bishop b1, immediately, okay, lots of tension. Now the tension is released. Takes, check, king g2 is the correct move, and bishop to f4. And now again, slowly the tension would rise. Bishop, queen d3, g6, there's no attack yet, but with every move, each next piece is joining the attack. So now we're in the relatively slow phase of the game, where you don't really have to calculate much, you just have to think well. White improved the rook, black improves the rook, white improves the rook, and now it's very hard for black to keep improving the pieces. So for example, rook to f7 makes sense to protect the h7 in case of diagonal open up. And now bishop goes to g3, and more tension is, I don't know how about you, I can feel the tension rising. There's a tension here, there's tension here, there's tension here, there's knight is coming to f4, the tension is rising. Apparently white is doing slightly better here, but the position is super unclear. For example, after bishop f4, another way to go, rook to c3, you just move the rook away, but I don't like this one. Apparently it's the best according to Stockfish, but I don't really understand. So basically white keeps the rook on the c file, which is a good place for a rook, and not to interfere with the bishop. So black improves the position with rook to f8. White improves the position with rook to h1. Black goes g6, deep prophylactic, because h7 was the problem. Bishop g3, white is improving the position. Every move, the position is being improved. For example, rook goes to f7, just like in previous line. And now white can actually try to benefit already. White can already hit on h5. To removing the knight. Bishop takes g3, rook takes h7, rook takes h7, f takes g3. So white gave up an exchange back, but fixed the pawn structure on the king side and took back the pawn. So, and now it's black turn. Black goes e5. If black doesn't go e5, white is better. Black goes e5, hitting it. White takes here. Black gives a check. King goes to f2. Rook goes to h7. Bunch of forcing move. The tension is now, I can feel this tension. The kings are in trouble. The position is open. I don't know what is happening here. For example, white could have chosen after queen f7 to keep improving the position with rook to h4. Increase the tension. And now bishop goes back to d6. And now white improves. What is the worst piece for white at the moment? The worst piece for white is the queen. It's just standing there. It is just standing. There's one more question on YouTube. Can you advise us how many tactics 1400 ELO players should solve per day? And if you can, tell us a book and the title. I have an approximate suggestion to almost literally everyone when it comes to recommending a book. It surely depends on the level. It's very hard for me to give advice for 1400 because I'm usually training above 2000. But my approximate frame of reference is that a book shouldn't be too easy and shouldn't be too difficult. I hope that's obvious. So how do you judge a book? So I would say you try a few puzzles. So a puzzle, if you want to train for blitz and or rapid or bullet, you can do stuff online. That's fine. But when you want to excel at classical chess, you need more challenging tactics. And when I say challenging, it needs to take you at least 3 minutes to get all the variations right. If it takes you less than 3 minutes, that book is probably too easy for you. Assuming you find all the variations, all the relevant variations, right? If it takes you like 1 or 2 minutes, come on, you can do better than that. So a good book would take you at least 3 minutes per position, but maybe not more than 10 minutes per challenging position. This way, you know you're improving, you're getting better and better. You should work on the edge of your ability. So that's my approximate recommendation. You can try any book, any source, but as long as you're focused and it takes you from 3 to 10 minutes, you're good to go, and that's how to improve. I used to do 1 hour of tactics every day when I was only a player, not the coach. And I would every day, I was doing chess, I would start with calculation, and I would do 1 hour of calculation, starting from simple ones and then moving on to the difficult ones. That is my recommendation to all of you out there regarding the book. Choose any, and this is my, let's say, test for a book or for an online source or whatever. It should take you at least 3 minutes if you want some challenging calculation. So for example here, queen h4, white keeps going. So by the way, all the moves are good that I'm suggesting. It's hard for black to improve the position. So I just put a6 move, which, well, if it improves, it doesn't feel like that. And now white can keep improving the position with rook to e3, or white can keep going and go forcing move, rook h5, takes, queen takes h5, and keep going to attack. White has big initiative, but black is doing all right, more or less all right. Rook goes to g7, improving the rook. White goes king f1, unpinning the bishop. Black goes queen b8, unpinning the knight on c6. White goes rook e3, improving the rook because there's nothing to do on the c file anymore. Queen goes to f8, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, f4. Now the third rank is clear for white. Queen goes to e7, and white keeps improving the position with queen h6, for example. And where do we land? Nowhere. White is just keep attacking. That's it. That's the problem with playing active chess in open position. It's very hard to you cannot stop the calculation. You have to just play active moves for as long as you can. So Abhijit Gupta played knight to f4 check. So white took, knight takes f4, bishop takes f4. We both thought that queen f4 would be too bad. For example, I can just play a simple move, bishop takes bishop to g3, takes queen d4, which was obviously the idea, and now takes, by the way, all forcing moves. Rook c7, bishop c6, and now knight to b5 could be a problem for the rook, so bishop goes to d3, for example, restricting the knight, and white would have big advantage. Or on queen f4, that was a nice move, bishop takes h7, king takes h7, and after rook h1, the bishop is trapped, and of course taking on h4 loses the queen. And after rook to h1, white takes back the bishop, and white has approximately winning advantage. So that is why Gupta played bishop to f4. Let me see how much time I have, 58 minutes. All right. So, and now this is an example. Your rook is hanging. What do you do? Do you run and protect it? Do you play a bishop g3 move to exchange stuff because you have your exchange up? Or do you run with the rook to c3? What do you do? No. You keep attacking rook to h1. That's what I think he blundered. Because now taking the rook would be horrible. To be honest, when I was playing rook h1, I remember this very clearly because the game is very short and beautiful. After queen to c1, I just stopped. I just felt that bishop h7 is unstoppable. And g6, my queen comes in. If h6, the diagonal is weak, it's just checkmate. Although after bishop takes c1, there was an intermediate check on h7 first. Because, of course, the bishop is poisoned after bishop g3 check. The queen would be lost. So after bishop h7, king has to move, and we are not even pawn down for the free attack. So of course on rook h1, my opponent played g6. And I continued with bishop to g3. Opening the h file, improving my bishop. There's nothing to do on that diagonal anymore. Bishop takes g3, pawn takes g3, queen to b6. And then again, oh my god, my two pawns are hanging. My two pawns are hanging. The pawn on d4 is hanging. My poor pawn on b2 is hanging. Do you run and start protecting stuff, or do you do something else? Calculation being tactics or puzzles? That's the question. Both. I was doing tactical puzzles all my life. All right. Not only tactical, but tactical for sure. So here I went queen to d2. I'm protecting the b2 pawn, and I'm getting ready to launch the battery with queen h6. Knight went to d4, and now there are plenty of ways to win this position. Technically speaking, black is not even materially down. The problem is all of my pieces are active, and black didn't even develop the rook. So there are plenty of ways to win this position. I chose this one. Rook went to h4. My opponent played e5, supporting his central knight, and now I had to find a series of only or almost only moves to win the game, and all of them. So again, we're back to attack, but this is the way of thinking. Good forcing moves that attack and improve your position. In the course for Chessable, I'm discussing, wait a second, let me see. Yeah, I didn't discuss any kingside attack. It was just only initiative, dynamic play in open positions, and the proper way to think and calculate in those kind of situations. So make sure there's a link in the description to YouTube video, or just go to Chessable and type my last name or initiative in the search box. All right, so e5. So black is ready. The knight is good. The center is good. It is time. Queen goes to h6. It required decent calculation on my behalf, And luckily for me, I succeeded. Queen to b2 obviously is a move. So what do I do? Where do I move my king? Do I cover with bishop c2? No. The king goes to h1 as far as possible from the queen, and there are no checks coming my way. So h7 is hanging. Rook on c1, for the record, I just need to point this out, is protected. So that's why it's working. Otherwise, I would just lose. So my opponent went with knight to e2, which seems like a plan for him. He now wants queen f1, queen c1, and he wants knight to g3 check. What happens next? Feel free to pause the video. This is a beautiful, beautiful combination that if I have to believe Stockfish, this is... Okay, I'm not gonna spoil. You can stop the video if you're watching the recording. All right, so it's time to finish the game. Let's go. Queen went to h7. Queen went to h7, king f8, keep checking, forcing moves first, king e7, rook h7, king e6. I think he may have ended the line here because there are no more checks left. There's one more check left, bishop to f5, ruining the cover of the king. So if king takes f5, so he just resigned here because this is mate. Let me show you what could have happened. This is a move he blundered. If king to d6, okay, this is not the good move. So king takes f5, it is rook to f7, and if king g5, it's queen h4 mate, and if it's king e6, it's queen f6 mate, and if bishop a5, gf5, now the 6th rank is open. Now rook goes here, king e7, queen goes here, king e8, and checkmate. So he resigned, and king d6, rook d7, immediate checkmate. That is why Abhijit Gupta resigned in this position. So the reason I'm showing you this one is to make sure that you know how important, difficult, challenging calculation. Bishop to f5, you need to see it in advance. To be honest, before playing queen h6, I don't actually remember whether I saw that one so much in advance. Let me see. Queen h6. When I played queen, yeah, because this is the most obvious line. Queen b2, king h1, knight to e2. Two things are hanging. I need to do something. Queen h7 is an obvious move. Yes, I saw everything before playing queen h6 in this position. Not before playing rook h4. I don't think so. Or maybe I did because e5 was obvious. I'm pretty sure I've seen all of that. The importance of difficult calculation, I cannot underestimate it. It's super, super important. And if you want to learn more how to play well in an active, in an open, dynamic position, you should improve your calculation and not the puzzle rush kind of calculation, difficult, challenging calculation. And you have to have a proper mindset when it comes to how to think, which moves to prioritize. You can learn that in my course for Chessable, or carefully watching this video of yours truly. And thank you all for watching. My name is Mykhaylo Oleksiyenko, Grandmaster, PhD in mathematics, FIDE trainer, etc, etc, etc. Go to CoChess if you want to book a lesson, or go to Chessable if you want a course about this very topic. I hope you learned a lot. Let me see. I don't think I missed any question. If I did, apologies in advance. And again, sorry for the technical difficulties. And thank you all for watching. Thank you very much. Take good care. Stay healthy, stay safe, and goodbye.